Hey everyone, my name is Katie Caldwell for GALvanize, and I'm over the moon to introduce you to Charlotte Wilder as part of our Who Not Do interview series. Charlotte, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, Katie. I'm thrilled to be chatting with you.
So she is a digital contributor with Fox Sports and does it all. You can see her doing interviews, videos, writing, listen to her on multiple podcasts, but that's not why we're here today. We're here to dig into more of your who. So there's one thing, Charlotte, I want to kick off with. I could not wait to talk to you about this. So history was just made in the NFL with female representation across the board. So both coaching staffs, referee, booth, sideline, you name it. So you sat down with Jennifer King, Callie Brownson, and Laura Oakman before this historic game between the Browns and the football team. What does it mean to you to be a part of this conversation in lifting women up?
I mean, I got chills, Katie. I was sitting there and, I wrote this in the article I wrote about it, but, their faces pop up on the little Zoom screens, which can feel so foreign and blocked almost, where I'm used to doing this job where I get so much energy back from people when I go into the field, when I interview them, when we're really connecting. And I try to sort of channel that into the work to be like, to tell people like, here's what it was like talking to this person, or here's what this person said. And this is a rare instance where they show up on the screen and I felt that, it was such a momentous occasion. And almost more momentous than that was that it was a big deal, but it didn't feel like, oh my God, how did this happen? It felt like a natural progression of course this happened, like, of
Mhm.
course we've gotten to a point where you have women in as many roles as possible. We need more. My goal, I think that I won't be satisfied ever probably in my lifetime in terms of women's representations in sports, but it'll be very exciting if something like that happens and you're like, whoa, we've got two coaches, one on each sideline, we've got the ref, we've got reporters, they're all women, when that won't be a story. When
Mhm.
that will just be like, okay, of course, like why wouldn't they be there? And I think we're making progress, and I think that there are a lot of people working really hard to support women, to bring them into situations, to allow them to succeed, that hopefully we'll start seeing more and more of this, because we already have.
I love what you say about it didn't even feel like a momentous occasion because it shouldn't. But then you read the comments, and we're not supposed to read the comments, but then you do. And then it just shows how much further we have to go. So, through the challenges that you faced as a woman working in a male prevalent industry, what's something that you've learned about yourself, Charlotte?
Um, Something I've learned about myself, I think, is something I kind of had an idea about, but that has become very clear the longer I've been doing this, which is that I'm very resilient. I think it's sort of crucial to, when you accidentally read the comments, when you start doom scrolling, when someone says, get back in the kitchen, that my initial reaction is no, it used to kind of feel like a gut punch, and it's gotten now to the point where it's probably sad on some level that I'm kind of used to it. But it's also really heartening to know that I can see that now and be like, oh no, you're wrong. Like, I belong here. I'm doing a good job. I feel confident enough in my knowledge base and my skills. I mean, I can improve drastically. I hope that I will always be trying to get better, and I'm nowhere near where I even want to be in terms of what I do. But every day working towards that. But I do think that I'm now confident enough where if someone comes at me for something, I'm like, oh, you simply don't agree with my opinion. It doesn't matter if you don't think I should be here, or if you don't think I know what I'm talking about, because I should be and I do. So it's the reps and sticking it out. And I think when you're younger in this industry, you take a lot of knocks, especially as a woman. There are a lot of people who, these sort of small things of condescension, or just bigger, straight up sexism that you're like, oh, you just don't like that I'm a girl. um that you really just kind of have to power through. And I hope that the more of us who are in these positions, or the more of us who get to a point where you've become somewhat more established, that you can help bring more women in, so that those kinds of situations happen less and less, because that's what I want to see. I want to see young girls not having to deal with some of the garbage that so many of us have had to deal with.
Hmm. Oh, the garbage is so right. And I think that's something that I still struggle with, using my voice a bit in just a way of, I might write a tweet that I feel super strongly about, but then I worry before I hit send because of the reaction. So you have such a strong, powerful voice that you use on your platforms. Was that always you, or did you really need to work like many of us to find that?
I think that for whatever reason, I have always had this sort of, I can be at once very insecure and constantly worried about how something is coming across, if something is good enough, second guessing myself all the time. I feel that way every time I send a tweet. I'm like, is this embarrassing? Is this bad? Is this wrong? But I do it anyway because, I don't really understand it.
Mhm.
There's something in me that's just like deeply confident at the same time that I'm panicked and worried about everything. And so it's this weird like dichotomy where I'm like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing it because for all of the garbage, for all of the comments, for everything that you get, I've gotten so much back from listeners, from readers, from viewers, who seem to really like what I do. So I think like, okay, if there are people out there, if I can make one person laugh, if I can make one person think about something differently, then I feel like I'm doing my job. And that to me is more important to keep going for those people or for people who might want to see someone who looks like them or who doesn't have a conventional sports background, who doesn't have a conventional voice, to be in this space. That's what feels important to me. So that's sort of how I keep going. I've also just always been a total ham. Like in seventh grade, I think I had to sleep over with a few friends and we like put on a show for my friend's parents or something. And my parents came to pick me up and the dad of my friend, like, he's like, well, come in, get your daughter. And he goes, give this girl a microphone. So like for whatever reason, I've always liked to talk,
Well, thank
which
God they did.
at that time, I don't know what I possibly could have had to say, but apparently it was something.
Well, and Charlotte, I've noticed that from following you, that you do use your voice in so many important conversations: Black Lives Matter, women's empowerment. But there's another issue that's close to your heart that I want to bring up: the fight against anti Semitism. There was an incredibly powerful interview I saw you do with Zach Banner, a Steelers tackle, and you talked about the ties between racism and anti Semitism, and that you can't be against one without the other. So, how meaningful, Charlotte, was it to have that conversation, not just to tell his story, but for yours?
Oh, that's such a great question. You're very eloquent, Katie. It's no, it's true. I think it was everything, honestly, because I'm Jewish, but I don't have a Jewish last name. My mother's family is very Jewish. My father is not. And so I don't have to deal with sort of on the surface anti-Semitism because people just don't know. And so when something like this comes up, I'm like, oh my God, I can't just coast by being like, this is someone else's problem. Like it affects me deeply emotionally. And you can't be against one form of oppression and not another. And that goes both ways. You can't be a Jewish person, suddenly standing up saying, wait a minute, you can't be anti-Semitic when you were quiet through all of the Black Lives Matter protests. And, conversely, I just think that if everyone is in this together, like what bigoted people want is for the groups that they're trying to oppress to fight amongst each other so that they don't have to do as much work. And
Yeah, what a way of
like that's
putting
kind of
it.
it. It's like if you can stand together and be like, hold on, wait a second, like this isn't a situation where there are only so many spots for so many people. Like it's a rising tide. And this might sound strange, and I don't mean to make this jump or correlation between oppression and like women in sports, but I do think that it used to be that it seemed like there were only so many positions for women and in the industry. And now it's like, wait a second, what if we frame this as there are only so many positions, so let's get as many women in there as we can, as opposed to like fighting amongst each other. Do you know what I mean? It's all of this, like once you reframe something to be like, wait a second, we're not lucky to be here, we're not being given certain allotments in any situation. Like everyone deserves to be where they want to be regardless of who they are. And I think that that's kind of the bottom line for me. And anytime I see something that infringes on that, it just hits this nerve and I like lose it a little bit and like rage tweet and then freak out. I'm like, was that weird? Was that too much? Was that not like, well, and then like, but there it is. So I think having a platform for me, the most important thing is that I'm using it. Most of the time it's fun, most of the time it's funny, most of the time it's sports stuff, but like when there's something I care about or when there's something that's important to any number of people out there that's unfair, I have like there's some if you're not saying it whenever sorry, I'm rambling, but like whenever I see someone say stand up for something they believe in, it gives me that much more confidence to do it. And so I think if I can stand up for something and someone sees that and they're like, this gives me the courage to call out like my crazy uncle at Thanksgiving, or this gives me the courage to like send that tweet about the thing I'm passionate about, then like awesome, because that does make a difference. That can add up.
It does, and there are so many moments I know that it feels like you're just yelling into the void, but I do promise it is coming across. But yeah, it's not easy. But I so
I'm
appreciate.
mostly yelling into the void, but thank you, Katie.
Well, it's falling on my ears, but no, I so appreciate just your honesty and your vulnerability because there have been a lot of huge steps through quarantine with everything, but there are so many more steps to go. And I think that's what we're seeing with so many things with Black Lives Matter, with women's empowerment, with all of the things we've talked about today. All of this should just be a start. But Charlotte, I can't thank you enough for being here and having these conversations and using your platform for such important things. So for Katie Caldwell and Charlotte Wilder, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much, Katie. You are a total pro. This was an absolute delight, and you're just going to keep skyrocketing. So I'm in your corner.
Thank you. And thank you for watching today.